Welcome bookworms, Nikki here with Nikki Loves Books. Today we have a book review of A Forgery of Roses by Jessica S. Olson. So if your book looks different from mine, it is because I have the OwlCrate exclusive version of the book. If you guys want to take a look at this beautiful cover here, it is stunning. The regular cover is also very, very pretty. So Forgery of Roses did come from the March 2022 OwlCrate box. If you are ever interested in wanting to know what OwlCrate has, please check out my OwlCrate unboxing videos. The one for March 2022 will be linked in the description below. As always, all my book reviews are non-spoiler. So again, this is a non-spoiler book review. So if you're just trying to find out what the book's about, but you don't want any spoilers of the plot or anything like that, know that you are safe watching this video. So today we're going to be going over the things I liked about A Forgery of Roses and then also the things I didn't like about this book. I do try to make it a compliment sandwich, so we're going to start with a few things I liked, go into the things I didn't like, and then wrap up with the last couple things I did like about this book. So before we jump into my actual review, let's go over what A Forgery of Roses actually is about. This is not a spoiler. This is going to be stuff that you can find out from reading the inside flap of this hardcover book, or in a lot of cases, the back of the book. A Forgery of Roses takes us to the fictional city of Laverton, which I would assume is probably influenced heavily by London. And it occurs in probably the late 1800s, early 1900s. There's not cars yet. Everyone's still using carriages. So just know it is somewhat based in reality, but it is the fictional city because there is magic. So in this fictional world, there is magic in the sense that there are some painters known as prodigies. So prodigies are able to paint and with their magic actually fix things. So if you have acne, they paint you and then they paint over the acne and the acne disappears. Same thing goes with an injury. You broke a limb, they paint you as you are with a broken limb and then they paint you healed and they can touch the painting and you're magically healed. So very unique magic in this world. So what like we see in a lot of fictional worlds where there's magic users, prodigies are persecuted in this world. So our main character, Mira, who is a prodigy, obviously has to keep her magic under wraps and hope no one finds out or else she is in danger as well as her younger sister. Unfortunately, Mira is found out by none other than the governor's wife, the governor being the #1 person who publicly persecutes prodigies. The governor's wife gives Mira a proposition. You heal my son, or I out you as a prodigy. Not really an offer that Mira can refuse, and so of course Mira's like, yes, I will heal your son. The main problem is her son's not injured or sick. Her son's actually dead. So Mira is whisked off to Rose Manor to paint the governor's son in hopes of actually curing death and bringing him back. But upon arriving there, she finds out that not is all as it seems at Rose Manor. In order to paint the governor's son and to bring him back to life, Mira does need to know how he died. And while everyone claims it was an accident or that he jumped, Mira finds out that there's definitely something more afoot, and it becomes a murder investigation and a whodunit. And that's pretty much the summary of A Forgery of Roses as far as the beginning and where this book takes off. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into the few things that I did like about this book. Of course, go into what I didn't like and then wrap up with the last couple things I did enjoy. As beautiful as the cover art is for A Forgery of Roses, both OwlCrate and the regular, plus the summary of the book, I really expected to love this book. I was really excited to start reading it. However, I was disappointed. For those of you that follow me on Goodreads, you might have noticed that books I really enjoy, I kind of devour. And it took me a while to get through this book, and the book's not very big. So I am sad to say that I don't have a lot of good things to say about A Forgery of Roses, and that's so disappointing. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the 4 things I did like about A Forgery of Roses. So the first thing I liked about A Forgery of Roses was the sisterly love. So Mira does have a younger sister that she cares for, and that's really her motivation throughout the whole entire book, is that she is trying to do things to help her sister, help them get out of the situation that they're currently in, which is really bad poverty. They are orphaned, their parents being basically MIA for the past couple years, so Mira really takes on the responsibilities of being not just sister, but also parent to her younger sister. And this is what motivates her to keep going, to do things that are probably not the smartest thing to do, but they're all in service of trying to better her life for her sister. I really enjoy it, and you guys might have heard this through other book reviews, but I really enjoy it when I understand a character's motivation. This is really helpful, especially when they go head first into dangerous situations and you're just like, why are you doing this? Like, this is not smart. You know, it really helps to understand and align or sympathize with a character's motivation, because it really helps explain when characters do things that are either dangerous and or stupid, idiotic. Nothing's frustrating to me when characters are really supposedly smart, but then they do stupid things repeatedly and there's no reason why. I find that infuriating, just because I'm like, well, they're smart in all other aspects. Why are they being a moron over here? So I do like the fact that Mira's motivation is clear cut, it's understandable, and there's a lot of sympathy and empathy there. The second thing that I liked about A Forgery of Roses was actually one of the characters having a chronic illness. So having chronic illness sucks. I'm not saying that, yay, having chronic illness is fun. I'm not. I appreciate the fact that A Forgery of Roses included a character with chronic illness, and they touched upon some good points about it. So if you guys did not know, I do have a chronic illness. I have a very rare autoimmune disease, which is rather painful. So it was really nice to have a character with a chronic illness in a book. One, because in a way, I feel representative. Like, I hate to say that, but it's probably similar to how a lot of people feel about having, you know, if they identify as LGBTQIA+, and there's a book that has a character that identifies that way. You know, it's really nice to see yourself in literature in some sort of aspect. And I think A Forgery of Roses, while the book wasn't centered around this character having this chronic illness, they made some really good points about dealing with a chronic illness, especially when you're younger. They touch upon how this character is not being invited out by her friends because she's not as fun anymore, because she's the sick girl. Or the fact that they didn't even want to invite her because they figured she would have to say no anyway, so why even bother to invite her? That character goes on at, you know, towards the end of the book, talking about how, you know, they're afraid that they might not be able to live the life that they want simply because they have a chronic illness that probably will never be cured, but rather just can be managed. And I really identified with that because that is the reality of my life. And I know that there's a lot of people out in the world that have chronic illnesses that can be really difficult to deal with just on a daily basis, sometimes on a minute-to-minute basis. And it can be extremely hard when, like this character, it's something that's not necessarily visible. You know, it's very close to mental illness in the sense of it's not a broken bone. People don't see it and automatically go, oh, this person's injured. Oh, they're healing. Like, oh, let me go help them because they might need that extra help. A lot of times with chronic illnesses, it's not something that you can visibly see. A lot of times for me, I do sometimes have a physical manifestation of my disorder. My skin changes colors. It's quite lovely. But I'm like, a lot of the times I can be in pain and no one can tell. It's really difficult dealing with that, because we do, and they mention this in the book, we have a society that does not accommodate chronic illnesses. It's very, very difficult to, one, find doctors who are willing to treat you or work with you. Of course, you have to deal with insurance companies if you live in the United States. And then, of course, your options are to push through and work like I do, or go on disability, and disability doesn't pay enough. And not to mention, on top of that, it's a fight. At least, again, in the States, I don't know what the experience is in other countries, but getting on disability in the States can be rather difficult, and it's punitive, and people really look down on you. So I really like the fact that A Forgery of Roses did touch upon that very serious topic of having chronic illness and how debilitating it is, especially living in a society that kind of wants to brush you away and tell you to go away. You're not useful to society, when we are, just not in the way that they want us to be. All right, before we jump into the things that I did not like about A Forgery of Roses, I want to remind you all that to please subscribe to my channel. I do book reviews, obviously. That's what we're all here talking about right now. But I do book reviews that are non-spoiler. I also do book recaps. So these are done for books that are a series, and you might need a book recap before moving on to the next book, especially if there's been some time in between. And then I also do OwlCrate unboxing videos if you're ever interested in seeing what OwlCrate has to offer. So please don't forget to subscribe. I love being here for y'all, and I really hope that you'll join me for my next video. Okay, let's get right back into the actual book review of A Forgery of Roses. So before we move on to the last two things that I did like about the book, we're going to talk about the few things I didn't like about A Forgery of Roses, which, if you guys couldn't tell, I'm giving A Forgery of Roses a 4 out of 10. So obviously, I did not enjoy this book as much as I anticipated I would, and I'm so sorry to say that. Not going to spend a whole lot of time talking shit about this book. This is mostly because it's a courtesy. I know authors put a lot of time and effort into a book, and they're hoping people will love it, and I'm always hoping to love any book I touch, but that's not always the reality. So, touching on a few things that I didn't like about the book is, first off, I was freaking bored. I was so bored. Really hate to say that, but it just dragged on. Like, there were times where I even forgot what the main plot was, just because we went off on tangents in other direction. Like, I was like, it felt kind of like a mess. And not a good mess. It wasn't exciting, like, oh my god, what's happening? It was literally like, really? We're really? Okay. Like, apparently we're over here doing this now. Like, I was bored. I just want to fair warn everyone that I was reading this book during the time that my cat kind of went downhill, and then we had to put her down. So there is a possibility that my bad feelings about this book might have been colored by my grief, but I don't actually, I'm not entirely buying that. Like, I'm trying to keep that in the back of my mind, that maybe I wasn't in a great headspace for this book, but there's always that possibility. So if you've read this book and you're watching this book review and you're like, Nikki, you are so full of it, this book was amazing, I don't know what you're talking about, please leave me a comment. Please let me know. I would love to hear from anyone else who's already read A Forgery of Roses, just to see if they had the same experience as me, or if they think I'm completely off my rocker, which is entirely possible. Again, I was grieving when I was reading this book, so that might have colored some things for me. So yeah, I was bored with A Forgery of Roses, which is also why I took so long to finish it, was because it was, it almost felt like a chore. Like, it was one of those things where I finished it simply because I was like, I kind of wanted to know what happened, but I didn't really care. Like, it was boring. Just boring. Which is super disappointing, just because it seemed like it was going to be such an amazing book. Like, I don't read mysteries all that often, but I do like those components, and I like trying to read a book and trying to see if I can figure it out before the big reveal of the book. Going along with feeling bored, I also didn't really enjoy how the book was written. There's nothing I can really pinpoint that I can say that Jessica S. Olson, the author, did wrong. But I just, it kind of goes along with being bored. Like, I just didn't enjoy the book. One thing I will admit, I'm not too crazy about first-person perspectives in writings. I don't like I did this, I did that. I usually like it from the third person. So that could have been part of it, is that I just don't like the first-person point of view. And A Forgery of Roses was written entirely that way, from a first-person point of view, and also just one character point of view. So that is a huge difference for me too. I sometimes can get behind a book that is a first-person point of view, but I like it when it's chapters of different characters from their point of view, if that makes sense to everyone. But yes, so A Forgery of Roses is written in the first person, but only by one character, and that's our main character, Mira. And I don't typically like that. But on top of that, even without, even if we took the first person perspective out of the way, I just didn't care for how the book was written. And again, it could have just been that I was bored and maybe I just found the pacing of the book weird. But I think overall, I didn't care for Olson's writing. For those of you that have joined me on other book reviews, this is going to be extremely surprising for me to say this, but one of the things I didn't like in A Forgery of Roses was the love story, which is like just mind-blowing for me. I don't think I've ever said in a book like I didn't like the love story. I typically love love stories. For a lot of books, a love story can be enough for me to be like, I love this book. Or I really enjoyed this book, or for me to devour a book simply because I'm just like, I need to know what happens. I need to know what happens. I need this romance. I need this love story. I did not care. I did not care for the love story in A Forgery of Roses. It didn't feel like, I don't know, like I didn't buy into it. Like, I think that's, like, it didn't feel genuine. It didn't feel like there was anything substantial there. It felt very superficial. Like, I was just like, okay, these two characters were just thrown together. Like, they weren't having moments for me to be like, oh yeah, they're falling in love. It was more like, okay, cool, you guys like each other. This is the first time I've ever been in the situation where I was like, I don't even care about this couple. Like, at one point I was rooting for two other characters to get together, and that obviously was a bad choice, and I was, I was like, but I liked them together more than I liked them, these other two people together. So it was interesting to kind of have that reaction where I was just like, I don't like this. I don't like these two characters together because I'm not buying it. Yeah, so for the first time ever, I had a book where I was like, I don't like this love story. I don't want these characters together. And it's super strange, but didn't like it. So those were the main negatives. So those were the main things I did not like about A Forgery of Roses. Please, again, if you've read A Forgery of Roses, or after watching this video, you go out and do read A Forgery of Roses, leave me a comment and let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think I'm correct? Did you agree? Of course, liking or not liking a book is subjective. It is depending on the reader. I'm sure there's people out here who really enjoyed this book, but I would like to know your thoughts. So please don't forget to comment. Getting back into the last two things that I did appreciate about A Forgery of Roses. So for those of you that are keeping count, we are on number 3. So this is the third thing that I liked about A Forgery of Roses. And that is actually the concept. I found the concept of this very Dorian Gray kind of inspired idea to be very cool. Having people have the magic powers of, being able to heal and alter. So being able to alter someone or other living things, so they can heal animals as well. I don't know beyond that. But being able to alter things, but through painting specifically. So it's not like they can just touch you and heal you. Like, they have to paint you. So I really liked this inspiration, very much from Dorian Gray. If you guys don't remember, Dorian Gray was that classic tale of a man who had a painting in his attic that was of him, and the painting was decomposing and getting ugly, but he stayed young and beautiful. So the concept I thought was really, really cool, and that was one of the reasons why I was so excited to read this book, A Forgery of Roses. And obviously, as we already talked about the negatives, it just wasn't executed well. Last but not least, number 4 of what I liked about A Forgery of Roses, and similar to number 2, which was, the chronic illness, but number 4 is actually mental illness. So there is another character in this book that has a mental illness. And again, I appreciated this simply for having representation, but also a good representation. I have a book review coming up that I'm going to bash the book for having really bad representation of mental illness in it. But A Forgery of Roses did have a positive representation of mental illness, but it was also educational in the sense of they kind of showed what could help people with that specific mental illness, but also being honest about this is not a choice. Having a certain mental illness is not like we wake up and are just like, oh, I'm going to be this way. I'm going to have really bad anxiety, or I'm going to have really bad depression or mania. It's not a choice. This is how we are. And again, mental illness is never our fault. It is our responsibility to take care of, though. And this character is like, they are trying to constantly push against their illness and do better and find ways of coping with it, which are all positives. Anyone with mental illness, that is our responsibility, is to find ways to make sure it doesn't wreak havoc on our life and that we can function the best way we can. Be the best version of us. Not the best version of anyone else, the best version of us. So I did appreciate that A Forgery of Roses did include someone's mental illness, and again, it was in a positive way. Yes, we saw them have some of their symptoms, but it didn't define them as a person, and they were trying their best to function with it and do what they could to ease it. And then also push for understanding. That was a big thing for me, is that this character, when someone was just like, oh, you're this way, they were like, you know what? It's not a choice. This is who I am. I'm stronger for it. And you can shut your mouth. And I'm like, that's all fair. So it was really nice to have a character with mental illness that was, one, done well, done in a positive light, and also had them stand up for themselves against other people who were judging them for it. Those were my 4 things that I liked about A Forgery of Roses. Again, I am very sad to say that it was a very short list, and that overall I didn't enjoy the book. Again, really had high hopes for it. I'm happy to say it's a standalone book. Even if it was in a series, I wouldn't continue the series. That's definitely how bad I thought of it, which again is very unfortunate. Thank you all so much for joining me for my book review of A Forgery of Roses. I really hope to have you join me for my next video, so please do not forget to subscribe. All my book reviews are non-spoilers. I do also do book recaps and, of course, my OwlCrate unboxing videos. So I hope you'll continue checking me out. And, of course, don't forget to leave a comment if you thought I was being unfair, if there was something else that you would like me to explain or go into more detail about. Please let me know. If you like this novel, please let me know. I would love to hear from people who actually enjoyed this book, and again, to see if I'm being skewed by what was happening in my personal life when I read this. Please let me know if there's any book reviews or book recaps that you're really, really wanting me to do, okay? Hope to have you join me next time. Thanks, bookworms.